Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 240. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the acclaimed writer and creator of Cain and Unidentified, Taylor Campbell.
Nice to be here.
Hey, Taylor, it's great to have you. This past November or so, you had Unidentified came out. It is not a sequel to Cain because you have issue number 2 of Cain, but it takes place in the same world as Cain, correct?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that for those that might have read Cain or those that might have read haven't read Unidentified. Do you want to give people a little bit of background? It's kind of a prequel to Cain, right?
Yeah, they're technically happening at the same time, but the first issue does happen in the past about 2 decades. So you'll figure out later there's a bit of a time slide once you get into the second issue where they're kind of running almost back to back.
So for those that haven't read Cain, it is as you mentioned, it's kind of a cross between like a Buffy and Supernatural. There's vampires in this.
Yeah, it's in a small town setting like Buffy, but it's a little less with the teenage drama. I'm sure there's still some in there, but it's a little more mature than Buffy was. So I like to put it on par with Supernatural. The monsters are a little scarier. The it feels a little more real. So,
and what's the story behind it? How is this different than, as you say, some of the other vampire comics that are out there?
Well, for me, it's a lot more real because every character in the book is somebody I know.
Oh,
they have different names, but every character is based on a real person. So the main character is based on me in my early 20s, late teens. And then, yeah, every character is very personal to me. But as far as the monsters, I write them to be as scary, but also kind of snarky. But it's hard for me to explain my own work. I don't know why. It's always been that way. Oh, but it helps that when I write, I have the most outstanding artist in Allison, my partner on Cain, because the things she does with it, I don't even see coming.
Talk to us a bit about the mythos that you had to create for the comic.
Well, the thing is, when I started this story, what am I, 30 now? So I started this 18 years ago. I wrote the original script as a movie script when I was 12. Okay. So I've been building on that. I've written it in about 6 different forms since then, and I have been building on the characters and the story, and it has been a lot, but I built the town. The town is the town I grew up in. So it was really easy for me to do. As far as the monsters, it has been a lot in my head too, because I have the next 3 seasons of the story like mapped out in my head. So there's been a lot of figuring out what each character needs to do and where they need to be to get me to where I need to go. It has been a lot because I don't like to know where the story is going. That's how I've always written up until now. I like to enjoy the story like a reader does when I write it, which I think is actually something I heard Stephen King say once when I was a kid, that he doesn't actually know how the book's going to end. So it's been a lot of work, and it's been a new experience for me since I started planning forward a bit.
So, but what's the history, like the mythology, or like how are vampires created or how are werewolves created in your world?
Well, I'm going to reveal more later in the book, but I did kind of steal the little bit of it from Supernatural because it's going to go back to Lucifer and Lucifer's blood, which isn't exactly what they did, but I'm going to have it so that at some point in history, he tainted humanity with his blood. And then as different people died, they turned into different things. And it's going to go back to Cain and Abel one way or the other. I'm not sure exactly where I'm taking it yet, but it's going to be cool when we get there.
So what about like your magic system? Is it hard magic or soft magic? Meaning, is there like hard magic, meaning there's specific rules you have to follow, or is it soft magic where it's just more about, willpower and just, energy and all that stuff?
We're definitely soft right now because I haven't exactly put the rules down on that. It's a fairly decent sized part of the story, but it's not huge yet. So I haven't exactly gotten the rules down in my head for that yet, but we're getting there.
Unidentified, as you said in your Kickstarter, is going to be it's going to be a mini series. It's going to take place. That's happening. How you have that kind of already established? Do you have other titles that you're planning on doing? And also, how many issues do you plan on Cain going, or is that going to be an ongoing series?
Cain is going to be an ongoing series. That one's going to go for however long I'm alive, probably. Unidentified, it is going to turn into a different story. This one's just a 4-issue series, but that's the story of the characters Neil and John together. After that 4 issues, it's going to completely catch up with the main series, and then John's going to split off from her. She's going to become part of Cain's story, and he's going to get his own book. Okay. On top of that, we have 2 other series for sure that I'm working on right now that will the next one is going to be titled Haunted, and it's going to come out at the same time as season 2 of Cain and the first season of whatever John's book will be. And then the one after that will come somewhere around the 3rd season, and that's going to be about the 2 people that you meet on the 2nd page of Unidentified. You only see him for a split second, the blonde woman and the snarky dude in the background.
Right.
Yeah.
I did like that. And there was, so you mentioned haunted. So the presumption is that there's going to be a ghost in here. So you got ghosts, you got werewolves, you got vampires. Are you trying to nail down like also the classic monsters of like mummies and do you have other monsters that you're planning on introducing in later issues?
I do like writing the classic monsters, and I do have other ones that we have planned. I'm not sure when we're going to use them because we're pretty deep into a demon story right now. But we did at the beginning, Allison made up a bunch of concept art of different monsters, which, I mean, I guess you would have seen if you could have gotten on my website. But she did a Wendigo. She did a Crocata. I don't know if you've heard of that. A few different ones. The concept art came out really cool, and that was when we first started this. And her art has progressed extensively in the last 2 issues. So when we finally get to them, they're going to look awesome.
And so with an artist that you have, how much does Allison have basically in charge of the story? Does she ever, at what point do you say, as the writer and the creator, do you kind of give her leeway and she says, I really want to do this, Taylor, I want to switch it this way, or maybe what we could do is move some of the story or the dialogue around? How much say do you give your artists in creating that storyline?
Well, as far as messing with the storyline, she doesn't really seem to have much interest in that. She's really just interested in the art, and she's pretty much got free reign to do whatever she wants. The first 5 issues with Cain, I had them written completely pretty much by the time we started, or maybe after she finished the first one. So I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to write it because I didn't go by any template for how I wrote the scripts. So I wrote them panel by panel and how I wanted the panel, where I wanted them to be and what size and stuff I wanted them to be. After this, because she's taken it and she's ran with it. And the first issue, she pretty much went exactly how I laid it out. The second issue, she starts, making body parts, arms, weapons like bleed into other panels, which looks really cool. And the first time she did it, I'm like, you know what? Do what you want, because it looked really good. And after this, with the scripts that I write from here on, I'm just going to write how many panels, what should be in each panel, and then she can lay them out however she wants.
So how has your writing evolved since that first time you wrote the script? Because I remember you said in a previous interview, this was the first time you've ever actually even like read comics or even written for comics.
Yeah, I didn't have any interest in comics before I realized that I wasn't going to publish Kane as a novel. My wife suggested that I do it as a comic, and I kind of blew her off. And then a buddy of mine that I worked with suggested it and said he'd draw it. He only did like half a page and then lost interest. So after I found Allison, I wrote the rest of it and it came out really good. And as far as how the writing's evolved, it's gotten a lot harder. I've gotten a little less detail oriented than I was in the beginning, because I realized that I was putting her in situations where she was trying to figure out what I was talking about and she was getting lost. And then I was going back and looking at it and looking at the script and being like, I have no idea what this is. I don't even know what I wanted you to do here. So I've gotten more to like writing what I want, but not like the intricate details of each panel, because it just ended up confusing everybody involved.
So, but you did not use Allison for Unidentified, correct? You
I
used
did.
Christian Tyler.
Yep, I found him and colorist Edgar Tavitas. I found them just on a Facebook post in a group. Christian, when I got him, he sent me some concept stuff, and I'm like, this isn't going to work because it didn't look good. And apparently he had finished the first page already, so he's like, all right, well, you already paid me for this. And he sent me that. I'm like, this doesn't look anything like the concept art you gave me. Like, you're hired. If you want the job, you're hired. This looks good.
How important are contracts when it comes to hiring artists?
I just made the contracts and gave it to them like the other day. I've been so bad with that. So I just finally got that done. They weren't really concerned about it because I send the money whenever I need the work. And at this point, we've worked together long enough that if they want to work ahead, they can work ahead and they know they're going to get paid. But I just did up the contract strictly for IP purposes, so that, they know they're getting paid for the work and the work is then mine to use. That was pretty much my only concern with contracts.
And what do you do, for instance, when like in those contracts, when you talk about, as you mentioned, like sample work of pieces, but what areas do you say, hey, can we meet and kind of brainstorm on ideas, or is that part of the contract as well, or is it just purely on like page count or any of that stuff?
We don't really get together to do much of anything because Christian's in Argentina and Edgar's in Mexico. So I pretty much just send them the scripts and they just do the art. As far as Allison, we're a lot more hands-on with one another because all of the locations in Kane pretty much are real places. So before she starts an issue, she will come here because she lives about 20 miles from me. So she'll come here before she starts an issue and get pictures of all the locations so that she can get them exactly right. But as far as the page count and everything, that's just what I write, and then I just send them the money for it. I think I did lay it out a little bit more in the contracts, but I think we really just did it how much I would pay them per page.
Right. And do you utilize editors at all too after you write a script? Do you have people proofread it at all?
It's going to sound a little arrogant, but I think a little too highly of myself. So I just kind of, as they pretty much proofread it as they do it. And if they see something that's messed up, they'll just let me know, and then I'll go back and look at it. And if it is messed up, then I'll fix it. And if it's not, then I'll just be like, just draw what it says.
What advice would you give somebody who has a really good story and they write it down and they're a little afraid to say, I don't know if I'm ever going to find the right artist for this, or I don't even think it's a good script? What advice would you give people that want to start writing comic scripts?
Honestly, I would just tell them do it. I mean, put a post up on a comic book Facebook group, a creators group. You'll get 100 replies within an hour of artists looking for work. And if you think you can't afford it, then find someone who will spend time on it, and you just pay them per page, and then they'll do it. I mean, once you get that first one done, then you can sell it.
How is your third Kickstarter different than, say, like the first Kickstarter you did?
The first one I did is a mistake that I've seen a lot of people do on their first one. They just write down the story, but they don't put anything up as examples of work to see what it's going to be. They just write down pretty much the bio of the book and then expect people to put money towards it, which is exactly what I did the first time. And lo and behold, I made $5. And you know how Kickstarter works. You don't get that $5 if you don't hit your goal. So you make sure you pay for at least 10 pages of the book so that you can take art from it, put it up there, put descriptions, write down about yourself, about the artist, about the book, descriptions of the characters, as much information as you can possibly give, and as much art samples as you can possibly give is the best thing you can do. And a video, a solid video trailer helps so much.
And so I'm really curious too, because you use Christian as your artist for Unidentified. You have Allison as your kind of your masthead main artist for Kane. When you're looking at creating other titles, are you looking at keeping Allison or keeping Christian, or are you going to be looking at other artists for doing other titles for your basically your Outlaws comics series projects?
As far as Kane, Allison is my ride or die. She will stay as long as she wants to stay. She helped me make this, and if I can keep her forever, I will keep her forever. Christian is welcome to stay on any John Doe related book that he wants at this point. After that, though, I'm trying, because we live near Penn State. So I would like to try, because Allison, that's where she went. She went to Penn State for art. So I'm hoping to find more up and coming artists out of there to work on future books, because I would like to be able to get my creative team together. That's obviously not going to happen with Christian and Edgar, but they have proved their work to me, and I'm good with them staying. But I would like to hire more up and comers.
Was there a formula that you kind of followed on this, or is this something that kind of came like an intuitive way to put together this 32 pager?
It honestly took me a lot of work to get to that, because it is the third book release, but keep in mind, it is the sixth book I wrote, because I wrote Kane in its entirety before I even started writing this. So did you read the first issue of Kane?
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't flow quite as well as this one, because it was the first book I ever wrote. It took a lot of practice to actually get to this, and I wasn't sure how well this one was going to go, but then I read it after the art was done, and I was like, this is awesome. So it just takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice. I've been consuming ridiculous amounts of media my entire life. So it's also been a lot of research, let's call it. Hours spent in front of the TV, 10,000 hours, right? So it's just a lot of practice, man. A lot of reading, a lot of consuming and learning how to do it.
And so how important is it, because you mentioned before that Kane takes place in your hometown, Wolf Valley, Wyoming. Is that a real place or is that a fictional town?
Oh, it's totally fictional.
Okay.
I've never been to Wyoming. I'm hoping to live there one day because it's gorgeous there. So that's kind of why I picked that as the location, and it helped with the story with the isolation in the mountains where it's located. So that's really why I picked there. And I mean, Wolf Valley, it's just one of those cheesy on the nose things. You know what I mean?
And so how do you balance creating real life locations to fictional locations?
Well, the real life locations are really just for Kane because the characters in Unidentified, they're based on real people, but they're not. I don't write them like they are those people, like I do with Kane. Like Danielle, she is based on a person that I know, and she is kind of, as far as her personality is concerned, like the Danielle that I know. But John, he looks like somebody I know, but I didn't write him like somebody I know. I wanted him to be this is a PG show, a a tough guy cowboy. You know what I mean? Like, oh, geez, how am I? Clint Eastwood, young Clint Eastwood, and Joel from The Walking Dead. He was a big inspiration for this character for me from the game, not the show.
It, because you mentioned you know where this is going, you know where Unidentified is going. Do you have a larger? Because you mentioned earlier, Kane can go as long as you want it to. Do you have an overarching meta plot that you want to make sure the readers can kind of get a hold of for your entire universe you've created?
Can you elaborate? I'm not 100% sure.
Because you mentioned that it's kind of all kind of tied to Lucifer in some way. Is there a point in almost in a Game of Thrones type way where, like, all right, granted it's 5,000 pages of a book, or if you put all the books together in a way, but is there a point in telling your overarching story with Kane and with the haunting and with Unidentified? Is there a larger plot that you're trying to interweave everything into to tell a giant story here?
Yes, I have about 3 big storylines ahead, but that is probably about 10 seasons of each book at this point. But yes, it is all building towards something that's going to be big. But I will continue on past that if I'm still alive by then.
Well, you only say you're only 30, right? So you're only 30. You got plenty of time. So
Yeah, we'll see. You never know how much time you got, man.
statistically speaking, you have more time than somebody who's 60. So that's
true.
What aspects, because you do mention something in there about silver hurting, so you do have some of that. Do you have any classic aspects to vampires and werewolves that are very unique to your world? Like, this is something that you're not going to see in a classic vampire or classic werewolf story.
That's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, we have 2 different classes of werewolves, which I don't think. Well, we have seen that actually, haven't we? Yeah, because at the beginning you see the wolves. They're like regular wolves, and then you got the Wolfman wolves. That's what they look like after he travels to the future, basically. And we're gonna delve into that, and you're gonna learn why. And it's gonna be different than something you've seen before. As far as the vampires, I like cheesy old school vampires, man. I don't know if we're gonna get to wooden stakes. Maybe. I hope so. If I can weave it in there correctly, I plan on it. I like decapitation, so we're probably gonna stick to that for a while. Sunlight is definitely an issue that we're gonna weave in and out of the sunlight deal, because I don't like it when they can't come out in the sun, but I also don't want them glittering when they walk out in the daylight. So
what's the next book that's coming out now in the series?
Well, this is actually an exclusive for you.
Ooh.
We're not releasing anything until January of next year.
Wow, okay.
Because I don't enjoy the indie model of releasing a book and then 6 months later doing another Kickstarter, and then 6 months later. So we're spending this year doing nothing but production.
Wow.
So that we have the entire first season of both books done. And then we can do a Kickstarter every other month in 2024. And then we can spend 2024 doing nothing but production for the next season, so that then we can do a Kickstarter every month. We're going to do every 3 months, we're going to release a 12-page anthology story in black and white, which will help kind of tell the story of, we're going to do a podcast that we're going to do weekly or 5 days a week. I haven't decided yet. It's going to be scripted from the character of Jason from Kane. I've already lined up my buddy Kenny, who the character is based off of. We're going to do it in video. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I just have to buy the equipment and set up my studio area for it. I think we're going to get a green screen. I'm not sure yet. But we're taking this year off from releasing anything, because I think consistency is more important than pretty much everything other than story. If you want people to come back, they need to be able to trust that you're going to come out on time and you're going to deliver.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Perfect. So people can find, as we mentioned before, people can find, you still have an Instagram page that's up. You have other places that people can reach out to you.
Yeah, we have 2 Instagram accounts, because I had to make a new one a couple years ago when my first one I just got locked out of it, and then I suddenly was able to regain access like 2 months ago. So we have 2 Instagrams. It's at Outlaws Comics and then at Outlaws_comics. And then Twitter and Facebook, we're just at Outlaws Comics. At Outlaws Comics pretty much everywhere.
You're doing a podcast, you're putting out books on a consistent basis, as you say, that's pretty exciting stuff. And it's really, and I loved getting into reading Unidentified. It's amazing to see how that script turned out at the end. So I'm really excited to read issue number 2 of that too. All right. Well, thank you so much, Taylor.
Thanks for having me, man. It was fun.
Yeah, I heard that echo a little bit. Let me see. Testing. All right, I think it's gone. I don't feel like I raised my voice a bit or intonation, but sometimes it pops in, sometimes it pops out. But here, I don't hear it anymore. So when Allison was, oh geez, Louise, I hear that. All right. So when I know what I'll do, I'll mute your mic out, and I ask the question, then I'll unmute it, and then we'll go see if that works.
That'll work.
All right, let me see. Testing. Testing. All right, I think that. All right, cool. All right. I'll edit this part out later, Taylor. So was it? So